Hello. I don't think anybody else has said it. Today is February the 27th, so February the 28th tomorrow, and then March the 1st. So maybe I am going to be the first to say Happy New Year to you all. Why am I saying Happy New Year to the 1st of March? Because I feel that is the start of the true New Year. Many have speculated that it starts on the 21st of March. But bear in mind, with this Anno Domini calendar, there has been a 10-day slip and an 11-day slip in 1582 and 1752 respectively. This is to do with the lining up of the equinoxes. In Christianity, for example, Easter does not have a set date. It is the first Sunday after the first full moon after March the 21st. So it can be any time in sort of March and April. This is why it moves. And they say astrology and everything is evil and you shouldn't go near it, by the same people that use astrology. Anyway, this is the start of a new series of videos, and I must stress, from the word go, this is additional information following on from a hunch that there will be something to find in this, but it does not supersede the requirement for you to do the inner work. And it is a very simple 1, 2, 3 step. First off, step 1 is to be open-minded, open to new ideas, open to new possibilities. But I should also point, as Ken Wheeler rightly says, don't just be open-minded to let anything and everything in. Use your discernment, go with what feels right, what resonates, as to what you allow to come into yourself, because then you have to digest it and process it. And some of the things you may look at might leave you with some uncomfortable feelings. But if you do have uncomfortable feelings, that's the inner work. Ask yourself why you're feeling uncomfortable. Is it because you believe in something, you have a belief in something, and this information is conflicting with that? Go with what resonates, what feels right with you. So be open to ideas, but be discerning. Step 2, the conceptualization. What would it feel like? Grasp the idea and ask yourself what it would feel like. That's step 2. Step 3 is both the easiest and the hardest one to do. Once you have the concept of something and you've asked yourself what would it be like, if again it feels right, this is where you fall back into it, as it were. You live it, you breathe it, you become it. That's all it takes. Easy steps, 1, 2, 3. I've already gone off on a tangent of what this video is actually to introduce. Now, what if I was to tell you that the language and various other things about Atlantis still exist in this world today? What if I was to tell you this missing 1,000 years that is often spoken about on different channels is and it isn't missing at the same time? I will leave off explaining this at this stage. I want to go right back to basics with this and paint a picture. This is going to link in a lot of different things like Manly P. Hall, Rudolf Steiner, Edgar Cayce, Archaix channel, Karimo Ahu's channel, Old World Florida channel, and many more. And Ken Wheeler I've already mentioned, and Yolanda True Love channel. You are basically in the world's, well, the world is the biggest, most interactive computer game you can ever play. Now, I was asked the question the other day, if I had the choice to step out of this reality and have all the questions answered, or to stay here, what would I choose? I would have to say that I would choose to stay here. Now, that might seem a crazy idea, but because my perception of this reality has changed so much, I am loving this reality. I am loving this experience. It is now starting to make perfect sense. And let's face it, whether you believe this or not, I feel that we made a choice, dare I say a conscious choice, a spiritual essence choice, I feel may be the right answer, to come here at this time. Now, time has two aspects to it. You can see time as a measurement, but you can also observe the beauty of the timing. As we enter this new year, 5917, you are going to experience some awesome things, some revelations, you're going to feel energies. This is what is described as a bloom of the Piscean energy. And it's a positive thing, it's not a negative thing, unless you choose to go with a negative feeling. Anyway, let's get down to basics here. So I'd like to talk about Atlantis. Now, I'm sure you've all heard the descriptions of it as being a series of concentric circles separated by water. Now, I'm going to have to turn now to Manly P. Hall. He did a series of 5 talks on Atlantis. You can find that in a playlist on this channel. The analogy he uses is an almost perfect one. So imagine you have the British Empire at the height of its power. So it's got colonies all around the world. At its height, it was said to account for 1/5 of the land area of the world. Imagine that the British Isles was to suddenly sink under the ocean, and it's gone. No more British Isles. So what is left of the empire? You would have the big colonies like Canada, Australia, South Africa, India, and then you've got Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, as it was. They were sort of united, as it were, at one stage. So you'd have some very large colonies, but equally you would have things like the Falklands Islands, Turks and Caicos Islands, Bermuda, Bahamas, and various other really small places. So imagine that infrastructure has now collapsed. Now, depending on which colony you are in and what resources you have available and what is left, whether you still have the ability to navigate and you're still in communication with the other colonies, would definitely define the development of the individual colonies. Now, take, for example, in a modern day setting, what has happened. Think of the English language and the way the English language is spoken and the words used in England compared to the United States. Basically the same language, but in that short space of time where the two seems to have separated, the language has also developed in a slightly different way. So a garden in England is a yard in the United States, a pavement is a sidewalk, rubbish is trash, and so on. A motorway is a highway or a freeway. So very slight changes, but The basic language is still the same, but over time that would further separate. So let's go right down to basics now. You're in one of these smaller colonies and you've lost everything. All you have is a memory. And in a modern day setting again, you may have the knowledge of how to build and construct a motor car. But if you do not have the equipment to cast that engine block and put all the component parts and have all the things to make those component parts, that knowledge is going to be very soon a fading memory of no practical value or use to your present circumstances. So let's paint a picture now that we're in a tribal group, a remnant of this Atlantis civilization. Your world has been completely changed, so now you are reliant on chasing grazing animals, things like bison and buffalo, as your food and clothing source. So you're in a society that is like a tribe, and you move about and you have encampments. We use teepees as an example. So probably at the centre of the encampment you will find the elders or the chief in the central teepee. Around that will be your various other significant characters within the tribe. So your medicine man or your medicine woman, the oracle, the one that is trained to recite the tribal history word perfect, and this is like an initiation, that the one taking that part would be trained for years to get it word perfect to recite that oral history. And you can see that pattern has happened all around the world. So you have this first central teepee with the chief or the elders. Now you have another circle around that, obviously with a walkway around between, which would in the time of Atlantis would be that water. But now you're on land, so it's just walkways between the teepees. Now you move to another outer layer beyond that, which may be the children, the families, that all make up part of this tribe. And then beyond that you may have like your warriors and your tribal braves that are on the outside circle. So you can see from that you have the same pattern as this series of rings with Atlantis. Now think also of modern settlements, towns and cities. You have the same pattern. You have a centre, a hub, and then everything else radiates out from that. The waterways now have become tarmacked roads. And you can see, looking at aerial views of some of these cities, and many channels have pointed this out, these specific designs and things that seem to have a common origin. So the memory of Atlantis in its practical applications still exists today. But if we look at the tribal version, you have a living infrastructure there, because you have this nomadic lifestyle. So you don't have fixed structures, you just have the teepees which you put up and take down as you move, as you're following these buffalo or bison. But in that you have living representations of your town hall, your library, your hospital, your court system, and many other of these civil buildings are embodied in real living beings in that tribal situation. Obviously when we move into what is called the Western world, they are fixed structures again. But the pattern is exactly the same. I'm going to end this in a minute because I can go off on talking about etymology and various other bits and pieces. But I'm going to turn now to the Archaix chronology because I feel this comes into this. So, going with what Jason has shown, the years 2239, 1687, and 721 BC, those three dates, or those 3 years in particular, are significant for cataclysms of varying magnitudes. Clearly the one in 1721 was a big one because that's when we moved to this 365 and a quarter day year instead of a 360. Something pretty massive must have happened then. But looking at the patterns of the remaining structures, I would suggest that the very big structures, like the Mayan pyramids, the Great Pyramid of Giza, Angkor Wat, and places of that size, are the remains of the pre-2239 flood. Then, as the structures get smaller, now straight away, this is reflected in the spiritual message about letting go of the material world, the material possessions. So the structures have reflected this in they have got smaller as we move forward in time. But then you have this 1687 Aegean flood, which basically forms the Mediterranean in a day. And then, of course, you have this other one in 721 BC. And I feel what is reflected in that, you'll get what is called the old world structures that have come about in the more recent times with the smaller stones, the smaller blocks. Gradually there is a progression of the buildings and structures that are getting smaller and smaller, and I feel that also reflects the way humanity has been encouraged to feel smaller and less empowered. But all that is about to change. We're about to go into the year 5917. I'm going to be revealing things like the language of Atlantis, the writing system of Atlantis still exists to this day. I'll leave that there as a sort of teaser for future videos, but as a spoiler alert, some of this I've already discussed earlier today with Lana A LaBonte on her channel. Unfortunately, the Wi-Fi connection is not as good as it could be, and if you can persevere with it, I understand it is difficult and to listen to when it seems to interrupt. So I will be going over this information on this channel and as guests on other channels and sharing this information because I feel it is very important to share. And all this, I can't take credit for the research as such. This is down to listening to other channels and just seeing things from doing the cross comparison. In this reality, it's talked about a bit about being judgmental. Now, depending on the level of judgment, it may just be simply you like or dislike a particular type of clothing or colours, and you'll either say to yourself, yeah, I like that, or I don't like that. There's a comparison being made. Likewise, we can look back at things and compare. And we can make cross comparison of things, and then it's not so much judgment, it's comparison and revealing and looking for the common denominators in things. And this is what I've done with the various channels and things I've listened to, and it's a cross comparison looking at the common ground, not focusing on where other channels have differences. Because this is about coming together as one. There's a thing called divide and conquer, but remember we're in a realm of duality. It's divide, discernment, and concur. Come to an agreement within oneself, and from that vibration, that frequency, you will find your tribe, you will find others that are on a similar vibration. As you change your frequency, as you lose fear, the world does not appear to change in its objective display. But what does change is internal and how you interact with this neutral field. And it really is seek and ye shall find. This, for me, started with following up on a feeling about the new world being the old world. And this has all just fallen into my lap from that. Just going with that feeling. Because it's the feeling I had right from day one that there's something not quite right about this reality. I don't know what it is. I don't know where to look. I've come into this reality. I have no experience of it. I have no information. I have no knowledge of it. But there is this feeling that never shifted. That proved itself to my satisfaction, that I can point out that the king has no clothes on. That's basically what we're doing. You're being honest enough to say, I'm not going to lie to myself and go along with what the crowd is all saying, because they're frightened of what other people will think of them. It's standing in your power and being able to say, the king has no clothes on, pointing out all these things. But like I say, this does not negate from doing that inner work. This is peripheral to it, but it is an important periphery, I feel, because it will also help to demonstrate and show how everything about this reality really has been inverted, and what was has been usurped by something that would seem to be its opposite, and is still operating today. We'll come on to that more in future videos, so this is just a sort of whetting your appetite, but I'll put the link in for Lana's channel. And if you feel up to it, and I recommend that this is worth going for, I'll put the link in for this, because this was to me, the missing piece of the puzzle, and I would suggest that you listen to this more than once. It's a 7-hour audio book, so don't try and do it all in one go. Just do maybe a chapter at a time, maybe 2 chapters. Make some notes, weigh it up. So what it is called is Irish Wisdom, Preserved in Bible and Pyramids, by Conor Mac Dari, published in 1923. And it cites its sources, Encyclopedia Britannica 9th edition, and various other references within that book. So I would seriously recommend giving that a go. It's called Irish Wisdom Preserved in the Bible and Pyramids, by Conor Mac Dari, published in 1923. So I'll put the link in for that as well, and I'll put the link in for Lana's video. Wow, this was supposed to be a short video, but it's already gone to 24 minutes. But hopefully that has given you something to sort of weigh up inside. Consider that plan of Atlantis, consider your town plans, consider the way things operate in this reality even today. The language of Atlantis will come on maybe in the next video. We'll look at the etymology, because that is fascinating in itself. So I'm going to say love to you all, and exciting year to come. Ta-ta for now.